Wow, what church is this?
This is the Church of Our Savior on the Spilled Blood, in St. Petersburg.
What a strange name for a church.
Ah, it's called that because it was built on the spot where Tsar Alexander II was assassinated in 1881.
The story of his assassination is fascinating. Let's review what happened.
Well, to begin, there had been a number of previous attempts on his life. The first was in 1866. It of course, failed.
On April 20, 1879, another attempt was made. Alexander was taking a walk when an assassin named Soloviev came at him with a gun. He fled in a zigzag pattern, and even though Soloviev fired 5 times, the Tsar was unhurt.
Soloviev, a former student, was a lone gunman, perhaps slightly deranged. He was quickly captured and executed.
Not every attempt was by a single individual, however. A small group of radical revolutionaries, calling themselves the People's Will, also was gunning for Alexander. Their first attempt at his life came in December of 1879.
Yes. They planted explosives on a railway line in hopes of blowing up the Tsar's train.
Of course, their timing was off, and the explosion missed his train completely.
This failure did not stop the People's Will. They were to try again on the evening of February 5, 1880.
Let's go take a look at the results of that attempt. Here we are in what's left of the dining room of the Winter Palace.
Yes, on the night of February 5, a People's Will member named Stefan Kulturin planted a bomb in the room under this one. The plan was to blow up the Tsar when he was having dinner.
As fate would have it, Alexander was late for dinner that night. The bomb exploded before he arrived.
You can see from the damage to the room that it was quite a blast. Unfortunately, 11 other people were killed and 30 were wounded.
I must say that up to this point, Alexander seems to have been very lucky.
True, but unfortunately, his luck was about to run out.
Here we are, back at the church again.
On March 13, 1881, Tsar Alexander would be assassinated on this spot.
It was a Sunday afternoon, and he was returning to the Winter Palace after reviewing troops at a nearby base.
He did this every week, and he always returned to the palace by the same route.
That's not to say his security was lax. He traveled in a closed, bulletproof carriage accompanied by 7 Cossacks. His carriage was also followed by 2 sleighs carrying more guards along with the chief of police and chief of his guards.
Of course, on that day, the People's Will had assassins out in force. When the Tsar's carriage reached this spot, bad things started to happen.
An assassin named Nikolai Ryzakov stood on the sidewalk holding a small package. It was, of course, a bomb.
He threw the bomb out in front of the horses, trying to time it so it would explode as the carriage passed over it.
His timing was good. The bomb went off, killing one of the Cossack guards and injuring the driver.
But because the carriage was bulletproof, Alexander was only shaken by the blast.
Let's go take a look at the carriage itself.
Here you can see the damage the carriage suffered. Even though the rear is torn up, it is still relatively intact.
Ryzakov was knocked back into a fence by the blast, and was immediately captured.
Alexander, wanting to see what happened, got out of the carriage to inspect the damage.
It was then that a second assassin, named Ignatiy Grynevsky, approached the Tsar and threw something at his feet. It was, of course, another bomb.
The blast tore into Alexander's legs and stomach, mangling his lower body.
Grynevsky was so close to the Tsar, that he was immediately killed.
But Alexander, although mortally wounded, still lived.
As his guards tried to gently put him into one of the sleighs, Alexander said to take him to the Winter Palace to die.
The sleigh carrying Alexander followed this route, across the Pevkisky Bridge, to the nearby Winter Palace.
Let's go have a look where they ended up. Alexander was brought here, to his private study, and a doctor was summoned.
The doctor's name was Sergei Botkin, but there was nothing he could do. Alexander was quickly bleeding to death.
A priest was sent for, and members of the royal family rushed to the scene.
Within 15 minutes, the Tsar was dead.
Apart from the assassin who died in the blast, another 5 people, including a woman, were arrested and executed for taking part in this crime.
It's rather ironic that the room Alexander died in, was also the same room in which he signed the edict freeing Russia's serfs 20 years earlier.
It makes one wonder how differently things might have been for Russia if Alexander had not been assassinated.